Joining us right now is the senator from the great state of Kentucky, Senator Rand Paul. Hello, Senator.
Good morning, or I guess afternoon. How's it going?
Right, I don't know where you are, but it's pretty much afternoon just turned all over the U.S. Yeah, thank you for coming on with us. And by the way, I had the pleasure of talking to your dad earlier in the week about his new TV channel. Real exciting stuff, huh?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, well, who knew your dad would become a TV star? All right, let's talk about a bunch of issues here, Senator, if we can. And I'm taken back to some remarks made by Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, just a couple of days ago. And I bring that up because of the Manning sentence yesterday and the news Manning broke today. He praised you and he praised your dad. Are you a fan of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks?
You know, I guess I'm more interested in the constitutional questions. You know, the Fourth Amendment. I am a fan of the Fourth Amendment. I'm a fan of the idea that third-party records should get Fourth Amendment protections, that your bank records, your phone records, your visa records, all of this deserve the protection of the Constitution. And I really think the court needs to revisit this question. So I've been joining together with the ACLU and others in fighting lawsuits that say that, yes, all of these records that you have that you let people hold should be protected by the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah, and we found out yesterday a lot of issues about NSA and three separate court rulings that the government violated the Constitution by what they did in going after emails of people who were not involved in terrorism, et cetera. And you have called for, I believe you did it on one of the Sunday shows, a Supreme Court review of the whole NSA program, correct?
Yeah, the thing is you can't really have a secret court that doesn't have an adversarial process. FISA court is secret, and there's nobody arguing the other side. So we have typically throughout our history, when we have constitutional questions, you have attorneys represent both sides, and they argue it, and there's actually someone who feels like the infringement of the law has hurt them. And so someone argues in favor of a client, and it sets up a situation where there's a valid argument. FISA court can't do that. And even the FISA court themselves have admitted that they have no ability really to police the NSA. So we can't rely on this court to do it. It needs to be done, and in a free society, it should be done out in the open. We should debate. And it's like, is it a big secret that we're trying to spy on terrorists? I'm not against that, but that's not a big secret. We really should be able to debate that in the open, how we do it and how much Americans get caught up in this.
Yeah, and here, you know what my problem is? We have a government right now that is willing to do all this in secret, as you put it, and I have nothing against going after terrorists either and keeping us safe. But on the other hand, they wouldn't stick a terrorist's head underwater, even if they knew that, God forbid, he knew where the next bomb was going off and it could save American lives. So they want to treat terrorists as, you know, I don't even know what to call it, but they don't want to do anything to show that we're going against our Americanism and our beliefs by sticking a terrorist's head underwater or blowing smoke in his face, but they're willing to tell, to keep track of all of my phone records. There's something that doesn't seem right about that.
And I think we've got our eye off the prize. We've become distracted from how you actually will stop terrorists. For example, let's say the Russian government gives you a tip that this boy named Sanarev is a potential terrorist. You interview him. You don't have enough evidence. But for goodness sakes, wouldn't we put some effort into following his activities when he leaves the country? He's on a target list, but they're so overwhelmed with data that his name was spelled differently in the interpretation to the computer program. And so they missed the fact that he went to Chechnya. So I think we get overwhelmed in it because we want to have everybody's data all the time, real time. And the thing is 99.9% Americans, or all of us really aren't. So that's why you have this idea of probable cause. You go to a judge. We all want to catch rapists and murderers, too, but we still make the police call a judge before they go into a house.
We're talking to Senator Rand Paul here on the Steve Malzberg Show. So do you distinguish between Bradley Manning and what he did and what Edward Snowden did?
You know, I think the bottom line is that we do have to have rules on protecting national secrets, really in both cases. There do have to be rules. And then people who protect the secrets or have access to the secrets, if they decide that they're going to commit civil disobedience, they have to sort of make that decision, and they make that decision going forward. I think the argument's not that it's right to leak material. The argument has to be, is there a greater purpose that they choose to fight against? In Snowden's case, the director of national intelligence came to the country through the Senate in a public hearing and lied and said they weren't collecting any data. That's an outright lie. It is against the law, and I haven't heard much talk of what should happen to him. But the thing is, he certainly shouldn't still be in charge of our intelligence if he's going to lie to Congress. Snowden comes out and releases something that shows basically explicitly that the National Intelligence Director was lying. What the ramifications of that are, basically it's against the law, and it probably has to be against the law, to reveal information. His was a little more selective. Manning's, was very indiscriminate, and by many news stories could well have endangered people and may have endangered people. So there is a difference, but they both really are leaks that we do have to have laws against leaks. But it has brought forward a question, though, that needs to be debated in our society, and that is the question of the American surveillance, whether or not we're going to allow a government to do surveillance of Americans without a warrant.
All right, I got a couple more for you, sir, and they involve foreign policy and your future. And why don't we try to mesh them together? How close are you to deciding, and how strongly are you considering running for president? And when might you be able to tell us something definitively?
I've been traveling a lot in Kentucky, but also around the United States, and talking about how we can grow the Republican Party to be big enough to be competitive nationally. Whether that winds up in me running for national office, we probably won't know for at least about a year. But in the meantime, we'll be giving the message a trial run around the country saying this is what we think. This is how we think the Republican Party could be bigger. This is how we can attract more youth vote. This is how we can attract more African American, Latino, Asian American, Jewish American, how we can become a party that looks more like and represents more of a broad section of America. And I think when we do that, and if we can demonstrate that may be something that Republicans will begin to say, hey, we need to embrace some of these libertarian conservatives because their ideas may broaden our base.
Now, I think your dad has said that if Chris Christie wins the nomination, he would not vote for him. Where do you stand? Of course, you've had the much publicized quote-unquote feud with Chris Christie. But if you don't run, or if you do run, and Chris Christie wins the nomination, could you see yourself, if that were to happen today, if today it was all over based on the way things stand today, could you support Chris Christie for the presidency?
I've always been a Republican, supported the Republican nominee, and don't plan on changing it anytime soon.
So that's a yes, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, take it exactly how I said it. I've always supported the Republican nominee and don't plan on doing otherwise.
Okay, now let's say you're the president today. Where do you weigh in, sir, on the aid to Egypt and the situation? Should we keep backing the Egyptian military? Should we keep the aid flowing? There have been reports that it's already been suspended pending further investigation. But if you were president today, what would you do regarding that issue?
There never should have been any debate. The law is explicit. If you have a military coup or a military takeover, the aid has to end. Unless you want a president who disobeys the law. This president is directly flouting the law, and he's in direct disobeyance of the law. So, no, there's no question. The aid has to end. You can debate whether aid's a good idea, and I think it's a bad idea, but the law you don't get to debate. You have to change the law if you don't like the law. So all these Republicans who stand up and beat their chest and say, oh, we're the party that's the rule of law, and we criticize, the Muslim Brotherhood for not obeying the rule of law. Well, it's a valid criticism only if you obey the rule of law. So I think the Muslim Brotherhood was something that was not a group that I would have sent arms to, and don't think they were headed in a way towards, Western-style constitutional republic. But at the same time, they were elected. And our law says when an elective government is toppled, there's no wiggle room. You have to end the aid.
Right, and the State Department spokeswoman, I got a kick out of it. It was like a Saturday Night Live episode, back and forth with a reporter, where she said they determined that they don't need to make a determination on whether or not it was a coup. It was like Saturday Night Live. It was insane.
Well, it's more like third grade, playground. You're out of third grade and people say, well, yeah, it's a coup, but you can't make me. You can't make me say it's a coup. It's a bunch of third graders on the playground saying you can't make me. And it was ridiculous. I read that entire exchange and was bursting out laughing, thinking, how can anybody with a straight face? The only thing worse than that was John Kerry then saying, well, the generals are restoring democracy. Meanwhile, there's an image on the internet of a guy holding his hands up like they did in Tiananmen Square, no weapon, saying halt to these tanks. And in the next frame, he's shot.
Yeah.
So that's restoring, according to John Kerry, that's how we restore democracy.
Oh, please.
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
those are American tanks. Those are American tanks. So the Egyptians, you think they get a warm, fuzzy feeling for us when they see American tanks being used to quell dissent?
One more on the foreign front, and that's Syria. John McCain just moments ago, which I'm not surprised, saying we need to take military action. He's convinced that Assad used the chemical weapons. I don't know how he would know that. We need to, it'd be very easy to take out the Syrian air bases. We need to be proactive. What's your take on the use of the chemical weapons? We don't know by who. And what should we do?
You know, I think Americans want their leadership to have a healthy reluctance for war and not an eagerness for war. And when I talk to people, including the GIs from bases in Kentucky who fight in the war, they're not eager for a new war. And it's a messy war. The Christians are on the other side of the war. So if we send arms to the Islamic rebels, these arms could well be used to kill Christians. Al-Qaeda is actually on the side of the war that we would be supporting. Senator McCain had a little trouble when he went over there having his picture taken with apparently with kidnappers. So really the question of vetting out who's friend and foe, even the general who's in charge of the Joint Chief of Staff, Dempsey, said that it's increasingly hard, if not impossible,
to tell them
determine
apart.
who his friend is foe.
Yeah.
And we can't even tell in Afghanistan. They join the army in Afghanistan, our alleged allies, and then they shoot us in the back. So I think that it's a big mistake to get involved in Syria, and I think the American people are wise to take with a grain of salt and with a skeptical eye at politicians who are eager for war.
Couldn't agree more. One final one. You've been very generous with your time. My buddy Steve Lonigan, of course, won the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate seat in New Jersey. Of course, he could have been appointed by Chris Christie through next year if Chris Christie had any guts, in my view. But I read somewhere that you've talked to Steve and that you're considering supporting and maybe coming to my home state of New Jersey here and campaigning for him. Any truth to that?
Well, Steve Lonigan's a great candidate, and I think he's the kind of candidate really that we need to grow the Republican Party. He'd be a perfect fit for New Jersey. I think he has like I say, a healthy reluctance and circumspection about war. He believes, as I do, that war should be declared by Congress, not by a president. He seems to have made some comments about American surveillance that show that he's concerned about the Constitution and our right to privacy. And he's fiscally very conservative, all of the things that we need in the U.S. Senate. So, I'm happy to endorse Steve Lonigan, and we'll look and see what more we can do for him.
Great. And let me, speaking as a private citizen who now has the ear of Rand Paul, do whatever you can to stop Obamacare from going through, because there are a lot of scared people. I talk to them every day. Patients, doctors, elderly, they're scared out of their wits, and they're looking to people like you, the few Republicans who are willing to stand up and say, we've got to stop this.
We will do. I got to run. I got another.
All right,
program,
Senator. Thank you. Take care. Senator Rand Paul, ladies and gentlemen, right here. We covered a lot of ground. Good for Steve Lonigan getting the endorsement of Rand Paul. We'll talk about it. 855-777-9660. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, the governor of the state of Texas, Rick Perry. Right here. All of it right here.